Good evening. It's the Brosis YouTube channel, and this is the KCJC Sports Talk. Welcome to all our listeners and viewers. I'm your host, Ken Panel, and my co-host is
John JC Campbell, live and direct from Kingston,
Yes,
Jamaica.
sir.
Yes, sir.
What's going on the rock?
Well, boy, many things going on in terms of sport. But let me start by saying that COVID-19 has been wreaking havoc. Just havoc on the sporting systems. We hear various organizations complaining about the lack of activity in their particular sport. Most recently, the Jamaica cricketers, the association, they are bemoaning the fact that no cricket is being played, and the association is now saying none will be played until about maybe September, October. But then we know that September, October is rainy season. So I'm not too sure how that will go, but they're not too happy with that. And again, it makes you wonder what will be the future of our sport in terms of the quality of our sport. The fact that we're not being able to play enough sport, how will we measure up against, our competitors later on down the line? But yes, and of course, the Jamaica Premier League, that is set to resume in June, about the 26th of June, thereabouts. So people are happy with that. The big teams and all the big teams are now sharpening their players in preparation for that. So we have the Tivolis and the Mount Pleasants and the Malines.
Yes, right? I know. I don't think Reno is in. I'm not quite sure if because I don't know what went on.
Stick a pin on that one. And it's another thing that we spoke of recently. The fact that there are no teams from the western end of the island in the Premier League.
Okay.
There's none. I don't think there's any from St. James. There's none from Hanover.
None from
Westmoreland. And I don't think there's any from Trelawney.
None from Trelawney either. Who does St. Anne's have? I don't think St. Anne's have any either.
Yes, man. The Mount Pleasant.
Oh, yeah, Mount Pleasant. My fault, Mount Pleasant.
Yes. But okay, that's it. And to me, that's a travesty. That's really, bad that we can't field a team from the western end of the island. And makes you wonder, why is this so? But that's a different argument, eh?
It's something important that you just touch on, and sometimes I think most of these things that we see happening around us is just based on education. We're not talking about just education in the field of sports. I think that's what it's all about. And whenever that is lacking, you see where there's always a hole or a void that's left in the sport. And I tell you why I'm saying this. No, one of the richest side in the world is Paris Saint-Germain, PSG. And because the supporters of PSG, when the club actually started, because they were fans who were educated in the sport, PSG was owned by the spectators for 2 years. It was owned by spectators. And later on, it was purchased by a group of French millionaires, and then from there on, it was sold to I think this guy from Dubai, but I know it's owned by a Middle Eastern country. I think it might be somewhere like, I think it might be Dubai. I can't remember. But anyway, I'm saying this to say that those spectators were educated enough about the sport to decide that they were going to group together and they were going to put some money together and they were going to start a team. I think that's also possible in Jamaica, but it's just the fact that people don't want to take risks. I don't think capital is the issue, because I think there are business people in Jamaica with enough capital to be able to do that. Whether they get the capital clean or unclean, there is enough money to do that. but it's just for them to have knowledge of where the sports can go. And if a group of spectators who really love the sport decide to do that, who know how far this can go? It could be another PSG in Jamaica. It's a matter of just understanding the sport and understand how you can get involved in it. Because it's like when you think about it, just like what you just named a while ago, and I got excited whereby I forgot that Mount Pleasant is in St. Anne's and said St. Anne's too, because it was looking bad. It looked like we were going to end up where in Portmore before we found the first team. So that's definitely something that the body that is in charge in Jamaica, whether it's the Premier League as a separate body or the JFF, they need to pay attention to this, and we're going to be suffering even more so now with the gap that's going to be created by the COVID virus, the pandemic that we're going through. That's going to definitely create a huge void. And when is this going to be corrected? Who knows?
The one of the things that we have to bear in mind, though, and I guess we have said this before, is that we are still a very young nation in terms of how we view sport. We are just now beginning to view sport as a business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have enough people or enough entities to invest, to put the necessary investment in sport that it deserves. The issue of the business of sport. We are very young in terms of our thinking in that regard. So when you mention about people owning the PSG organization, that is a mature thought. That's a mature thought process from the citizens. I don't think we have reached that stage yet in terms of our sport awareness. It's going to take a little bit more, and I think we have begun with Mount Pleasant, and I think to a lesser extent maybe Harborview had started something and so on. But the level of investment that it will need, we are not there yet. Just now beginning. So we need the big players, the big players, the big name players with big money to invest in it, and we're not there yet, not there yet.
Yeah, but just like I said before, when I hear people say that Jamaica is a poor country, then you know where that's coming from and so forth, and you know what they mean by saying that Jamaica is a poor country. But certainly I have to believe, based on what I've seen, that there are people there who have the capital, enough people who have the capital who could start the same venture like PSG.
Yes.
It's just that maybe it's a trust, and it's the willingness to take that risk, because it's a huge risk. It might be a long term before it brings any kind of return, but when it starts bringing back return, you can recover whatever the startup capital is in a very short period of time. So it's just a matter of people understanding the risk that's going to be undertaken and is willing to go and take that risk. So it's just like you said, but it comes from a lot of things, of course. Just like you said, it comes from a solid base of understanding what the long-term benefits can be, as opposed to I'm sad to say this, but most of us as Jamaican, we like to see the money right in front of our face.
Well, this is what I'm saying. It takes a different level of maturity and awareness.
Yeah, we like to see it on a short way.
We'll invest in real estate. We'll invest in motor cars, invest in maybe farming, but sport is a different ball, literally a different ball game, which will take some time. But we're happy to know that the league, Jamaica Premier League, will start on June 26th.
Right.
That's a good thing,
Right. And again, John, just like we've been saying over and over, we know that this show of itself, might be a hard sell to most people because of where we're coming from. Our intention is to kind of help to spread the knowledge about what sports can become, not only from the point of view of the possibility when it as it relates to earnings, but the possibility as it relates to preventing people all over the world, especially in Jamaica, from you know disease prevention and fitness and training, nutrition and so forth. All of these things coming together. Health and wellness is very important, and we know what can happen as a result of poor health and wellness. You have high blood pressure, diabetes, heart failure, and even many forms of cancer. So from that point of view, we hope that people will be listening in and maybe put some thought into it. Maybe what those guys are saying, we need to look into it. It's a long-term venture, but can be very profitable. So let's see what we can do. So that's our hope, that these things are going to happen.
What I think is probably perhaps more readily understood is the issue of sports tourism, where people can invest in infrastructure that they can see, they can actually see returns. For instance, like right now in Barbados, for instance, and Grenada, what is happening now is that what has been happening is that teams, for instance, from England will go to Barbados, cricket teams especially, and they'll camp there for a good month to play and train cricket clubs from England. They do the same baseball and so on in Grenada, where they go to Grenada and they rent facilities and they just train and play with the locals and so on for a month. Now that is serious money they would have spent on housing and accommodation and food and services, transportation. That's a lot of money being pumped into the economy. So it's easier for an investor to see that rather than say, let me invest in a football team or a cricket team. It's a different, but I think I'll say we're getting there, and it's going to take a little while, but I think we're getting there.
And I think Mount Pleasant is going to do a lot as it relates to that, because people are going to see that model and is somewhat attracted to that model and say, I think we can do it too. So hopefully that's going to rub off on some of the investors in Jamaica.
I'm sure it will.
But while we're on football and it relates to Jamaica, one of the big headline in the paper this morning, one of the American paper this morning, was the fact that Jamaica international Alvis Powell is training with the Philadelphia Union. With a possible move to the Union. When I saw this and I started reading, I did not know that Alvis Powell was so young, because he'd been playing for such a long time and as an international representative of the Jamaican team or the Reggae Boys. I didn't know that he was so young. But because I knew that he had that many appearances. They said that he has 49 international appearances, or what we call international caps for the Reggae Boys. And this would be very good for him. As a matter of fact, he has played one practice match so far, so it's almost a done deal. And he's no stranger to the Union, of course, the Philadelphia Union, because we have goalkeeper Andre Blake and Corey Burke, who are members of the Reggae Boys, also were played for the Union. So I would very much like to see him join up with them and see how much a difference he can make in the American League, because he actually played in the American League before. I think he played for the Portland Timber and the team in Miami also. He played for them before. So yeah, let's wish him all the best, and hopefully or goalkeeper and striker will be able to help to convince owners and management to bring him in to be a part of the Union.
And I guess this speaks a lot for the we go back to investment in sport, and in this case football, where we need to invest more in youth development, because if we can produce high quality players, especially in youth players, for want of a better word, these players now can be sold. They can be sold to the professional entities in Europe and certainly in the United States for good money too, and they will pay good money for such young raw talent, as was the case in Baby Gardner. That was, a stellar move. I mean, that was really a big move for Harborview, and they gained a lot from that. And that was just one player. That was just one
all the way
player.
to Bolton Wanderers, and he was the captain for a number of years at Bolton Wanderers too.
And that was good money returned to. So I'm saying that is where people can identify with it kind of investments, especially you. But I don't want to leave the football thing without touching base. What happened to Manchester United, man?
But you know what happened? I'm not a Manchester United fan, really. I love Manchester United to watch them because I love quality football. But my team is really Chelsea. I think everybody by now know I'm a Chelsea fan.
I gather that Villarreal would have beat them in the Europa League final, and so they lost on that. But importantly, and perhaps not so nice, is the fact that Rushford, Marcus Rushford, that's his name, no? We see again the racism thing in football erupted again, where I suspect because of Manchester's loss in that Europa League final, racism, and they, got threats and all kind of, bad words being directed at Rushford. And I'm saying, after all this time, I thought we were beyond that now.
No, you know what, John, is still in sports, and I'm gonna piggyback a little bit to Jamaican football, but let's go on with what you're talking about. It's in every sport, and later on we're gonna touch on some tennis, and we're gonna outline how it is also prevalent in tennis.
Yeah, well, we know it's prevalent in sport, but especially the football thing, that is such a universal thing. Football is universal, it's global. I mean, just about every nation on earth.
Yeah, but it's not going
anywhere. So wondering how comes we still have, racial slurs being directed at players.
But remember, John, since the George Floyd situation, the players have been kneeling. All the players have been kneeling as a mark of solidarity. That of course there's no racism in football, and before all of that, there used to be, stuff going across the screen at every Premier game saying no racism in football. But it's not happening. Racism, it was not created on the field or with the spectators at the game. Racism was created before that. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Just come into a game, not going to change you from a racist to a person who is tolerant as it relates to race. It's not going to change that. So when I see them kneeling every Premier League game that I watch, I see them kneeling, I just wonder to myself how much is impacting what we're trying to change, and I don't know how this is going to change. It's something that I think about. It's one thing that never leaves my mind. And I think most of it have to be within us as races that are considered to be looked down on. It's within us to understand within each individual that we are just as good as anybody else, and not just saying it from our lips, but to feel that way. I feel that way when I went to school with all of these white guys. I felt that way, and don't believe it or not, I've met and I've came up across many of these cases, but you just got to know how to fight it, without physical hitting somebody. You just got to know how to fight it, and just got to stand up. You just got to know.
Indeed. I want to also say congrats to Manchester City as well. Champions League finals, and they did remarkably well.
Well, yeah, I was gonna touch on that, but before we go on to that, there is something that we're missing in Jamaica football. I haven't heard any commentary about it. I haven't seen any report about it. Is the new development or the continuous development of these footballers who are leaving Jamaica, the continuous development of their resume. You know, most of these footballers are becoming more and more relevant, and they're becoming more and more, you know, they're deeper and deeper as it relates to their resume. So now, as opposed to back in the days when you say that, for example, Goodison and Gardner, when it was only a few Jamaicans playing abroad and they would not move from team to team, Jamaican players nowadays are able to, because of their value, they're able to be very selective on the team that they're playing for. So this is something that behind, I mean, if we're paying attention, we're seeing a transformation in the quality of footballers coming out of Jamaica. Their value is going up. They're better able to go out and be selective on the team that they think will better suit their skills and so forth, and the team that will pay them the most money. So then that's a good thing that's coming from Jamaica.
In the same breath, and this is why it's important for Jamaica to maintain its ranking. Because once you drop below a certain ranking, they don't look at you anymore. You have to maintain your ranking in terms of where you are, certainly in CONCACAF and in terms of the world stage. So it's important that we do well, not just to win the World Cup, but at least to give our players every chance of getting into the top leagues across the globe, certainly in Europe.
I got a beef with you though. How come you mentioned Manchester City and you didn't say anything about Chelsea? As if we hadn't. Remember, we have beaten Chelsea before. So, I mean, we have beaten Manchester City before. So you should at least mention us before you mention Manchester City.
Well, I focus on winners, I focus on champions.
Yeah, but on a more serious note, though, John, this is the direction that football is going in as it relates to Manchester City and Chelsea. I believe right now those are two of the best technicians in the game as coaches, Pep Guardiola and Thomas Tuchel. I think they're two of the best technicians, along with our German coach from Liverpool. So
Liverpool.
In this game, I hate to say, but Thomas Tuchel he's doing very good, but I think Pep does a better job in switching players, just to match the team that he's playing. I see Thomas is trying to do the same thing, but Pep has a way of using his wing back to overlap and to switch them from right to left. You know what I mean? And to switch them into a holding midfield position and so forth. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a game that is going to tell me how far away is really Thomas Tuchel as it relates to Pep Guardiola, because I know where Pep is already. I know that maybe he's one of the best that I have ever seen. And when I say one of the best that I've ever seen, I'm including former Manchester United coach also that I've seen. So it's just going to be a game of tactics throughout the game, which is coming up on Saturday.
Well, strategy and tactics is everything, right. And I think that is the hallmark of an excellent coach. And I want to mention briefly, back in the days, there was a coach called Steve Buckner. If nothing else, he was a good tactician. He knew how to use his players. You give him a handful of good players, mixed with a bundle of average players.
Yeah.
And he was able to use each player so effectively that he got a lot of success. He won many titles just because of how he used his players.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about when I mentioned Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, I realize that. I'm just kind of relating it to a local situation.
But nowadays, there's so much focus, like we're saying, there's so much focus on that aspect of the game. The coaches that are successful nowadays are not just coaches with the name of saying, oh, he's a good coach. The moment they go to compete against these sides with the technicians, the coaches who are technicians,
that is where it's at.
Then they fall short. They fall short. If you look at it right now, the top 4 teams, the top 4 finishers in the Premier League are, it consists of those coaches who emphasize that, and it's very good technicians as it relates to coaching.
Mind you, there is, as far as I'm concerned, there's barely any remarkable difference between the players, in terms of the quality of the players,
Right.
There's hardly, you may have one who stands out, but generally they're within a certain realm, if you ask me. And so it really boils down to the coach, how the coach uses. So there's no much difference between the players now. They're great players, well trained, well prepared players. How they are utilized is what makes a difference in the end.
Yeah, and the game on Saturday, no doubt, is going to be an exciting game. And like I said, I'm a sports fanatic. I'm not just watching sports for entertainment. So I'm always evaluating. I'm always assessing. And I know many might look back on me after Saturday and said, if Chelsea win, and say, well, you're a Chelsea fan and you had doubts in Chelsea. But I have to go with what I've seen so far. I doubt very much that Chelsea is going to be able to beat Manchester City twice.
Yeah, well, let us see how that goes. But
I doubt very much. So if I want Chelsea to win, I have to sit back and just face reality.
Let us see how that.
I'm wrong. Hopefully, I'm wrong.
Let us see how that goes. Exciting times,
But I want to touch on a little bit on the NBA. So as you know, the NBA playoff started, and last night at the Madison Square Garden, crowd was electric last night because the New York Knicks they won their game against Atlanta Hawks. And you would think that it was the final of the NBA championship because it was I think it was 15,500 in attendance. And the crowd was so electric that they said it felt like it was about 50,000 people in the stand. And they took to the street. And believe it or not, it's just 1-1. But I can understand where all of this excitement is coming from. People are excited that they can go back again.
Yeah, it's as simple as that.
Start watching the game, you know what I mean? As also, the New York Knicks hadn't won a playoff game since 2013. So it's a combination of the fact, the kind of freedom just to go outside and 15,500 fans being able to go into Madison Square Garden and watch the New York Knicks play with a team that no one expected to do as well. And they were able to equal the series, to 1-1. So now the third game is going to be in Atlanta. And I think that Atlanta is going to be like blood in the water because some Atlanta players were not treated real nicely at the Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, one of the star players, Trae Young, somebody spit on Trae Young. And of course they do an investigation and they found out who it is and banned the individual from Madison Square Garden. And they turn it over to legal authority, but Trae Young said he doesn't want to press charges. He just want to leave it alone. So it's going to be vengeance going to Atlanta. And, on paper, Atlanta Hawks is definitely a better team. So we'll see where it goes from there. But I just wanted to mention that because...
I'm saying it's exciting times ahead again, eh?
Yeah, but when you watch the playoff right now, I'm watching the games and the teams are at par. It's a lot of parity. As a matter of fact, I think in the playoff right now, I think it's about 1, 2, 3, 4. The matchup are 1-1. 4 of the matchup are 1-1 so far of games that are played. And some of them, there's only one that is 2-2 and that's the game between the Bucks and the Heats. You know,
Okay.
Milwaukee Bucks and Miami Heat. So, you know, it's a lot of parity, and we're seeing that a lot of parity in sports in general. Look at we can touch back at the Premier League and you see what I'm talking about. It went all the way to the last few games before they could determine who are the 4 teams that are going to automatically qualify for the championship. And that's good for those of us who love sport because we like to see good competition, no matter what it is.
Such is the power of sport, of high quality sport. And I gather Curry is in line for MVP as well.
Oh, Steph Curry?
Yes, I gather.
Yeah, as always, but unfortunately they're out of the playoff. But you know, as always, you know, he's just a showman, and you know, he's always gonna be in contention for, you know, for MVP. His name is always gonna be mentioned no matter what, because
Yeah.
he's such an outstanding player. You know, but
Right.
go ahead.
Yeah, we're moving from basketball because I want to touch something on the Olympics
That's
and
what
track
we're
and
going to.
field. I want to segue into that. But there's still a lot of controversy over the Olympics, whether or not it should be held or not held. So, but I think it will go along. And it bothers me because we're not, again, you're not too sure of what the quality of the performance is, you know, what the quality is likely to be. A lot of the top sprinters might not even perform well, you know. We're not too sure what's happening here. And especially now, because Japan is the state of emergency, not state of, is it state of emergency, should I say, with regard to the COVID, regarding the COVID issue. You know, they're trying desperately to see if they can keep down the numbers of of people being affected by this virus. So that it's kind of scary, you know, because of what's happening at the global level and at region. So we're not too sure exactly what's going on.
Yeah, remember last week I mentioned that it was about 70% of the population that was against the Olympic game,
Including medical fraternity.
Right, and they were calling on the government to ditch the Olympic totally. They're trying to keep the pressure on the government. As a matter of fact, since last week, the percentage of the public increased to 80%.
Right. So that is where it becomes so scary and so uncertain, you know. But I think the authorities, the IOC,
yes,
they are saying that regardless of what is happening, the games will go on. And I guess people are saying no because of the amount of money that's involved.
And the cases of COVID have plummeted also. I mean, the cases of they've seen I should say they've increased also, and a lot of the members of the public are considering the Olympic a super spreader, you know, as it relates to the coronavirus. But like we discussed last week, and I was saying to you, the number right now that the cost of the Olympic right now is about $28 billion, $28 billion. And it has increased because of the postponement, not only because of the postponement, but also because of measures that have been taken to fight the coronavirus. You know, so we know that, and then again, the International Olympic Association, we already know that they are the body that outlined the contract and draft up the contract, and the contract was signed by Japan. So it's very difficult for the Japanese government, even though the public is calling on them to cancel the Olympic, for them to do so. Because if they do so, like I said, the contract is very simple. It says that only the Olympic, the body has the power to cancel the contract. And like I mentioned last week also, the only other thing they could do is it could be a joint agreement. And if it's a joint agreement, again, I mentioned that last week also, then the insurance company would have to come into play now to cover all of these losses. And I mentioned it already, I say it would be what? It's what, $28 billion. So when you put all of that and compare what the IOC might be claiming also, that would be one of the biggest payout ever for an insurance company.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
so, I'm almost certain that the game is going to go on. But we got to bear in mind
at
that,
this point, yeah, at this point, unless something, quite
even,
dramatic.
but
Yeah.
we got to realize that even the United States of America have put out travel advisory for going to Japan because of the number of cases increasing, and they have locked down in, I forget what they call. They don't call their stuff provinces. I forget what they call it, but in certain areas, and in Tokyo, where the Olympic is supposed to be held, um, of course there's a lockdown, and they're thinking about extending it all the way to about the 23rd of June, because it's supposed to be expiring sometime this month. They're thinking about extending it to the 23rd of June. So they're trying to do their best to see how they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
combat the
indeed,
virus
indeed,
and make
indeed.
the games a reality. But
Yeah,
I think it's going to happen because there's too much money involved, and the Olympic Association is not budging at all. They want the game to be held.
yeah, that's absolutely true. But I want also, since we're on the Olympism, and
Mhm.
I just want to just mention a story right here in Jamaica again, Jamaica Olympic Association. They traveled um, all the way to St. Mary recently to do what? To interview a group of youngsters between the
Mhm.
ages of, I think, 15 and 23, who, out of just uh, habit and just not having nothing else to do, have been jumping from a bridge into the river.
Mhm.
This bridge is about 80 something feet from the water. And they've been doing so in all kind of fine styles, twisting and turning. In other words, these youngsters, untrained as they are, have been demonstrating tremendous skills in terms of diving.
Okay.
So that the news actually came on the social media, of course, and caught the eyes of the president of the Jamaica Olympic Association, who decided to travel to St. Mary to meet the youngsters.
Mhm.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, and we have said this before, that Jamaica is replete with raw talent.
Yes. Yes. I agree.
And just for the want of training opportunities and resources, we don't really hear about these talent. But they have been interviewed, and apparently there's going to be a move to harness the talent that there is there, and get the youth in a kind of, get them into a kind of a more controlled and constructive training system to nurture them into being divers. I think the last Olympics we had one representative who was diving from the high board. I don't remember his name right now, but there was this fellow who did fairly well as a diver the first time we entered in diving. But the point is that we have talent here. We have so much talent. So let us see what becomes of that.
Yeah,
You know,
but
it should,
we continue. We still have some more on the Olympics because you mentioned earlier on that how will our sports be impacted by the coronavirus? I think it's going to impact the Olympics a little bit but I don't see a lot of impact on certain sports in the Olympic, or most of the sports in the Olympic. As a matter of fact, we have seen some Olympic preview because with the Diamond League started, and they had the Boston, whatever it's called, that they have every year, that where they lay out the track on the streets of Boston, and we have seen some real good participation and some real good timing. And the first Diamond League that was held in Gateshead in England, um, it was the British kind of weather. That I don't know if you're familiar with that British kind of weather, but when you're in England, if the sun is not out, it's bleaky and it's usually very misty. But so it was a lot of rain and so forth. And we had some of the top sprinters line up in that race. We were supposed to have Elaine Thompson, Shelly Ann Fraser, Shakira Richardson. We had uh, all girl from the Ivory Coast, Talou, and we had also the British sprinter. I forget what her name is now. I'm having a brain freeze. But anyway, so it with all of these athletes lining up, even though with all of those conditions, they still did very well. They still did very well. The Shelley and Fraser Price was fourth, but you can see that everybody was trying to manage the way they're running, except for of course, the British sprinter who is very much familiar. I'm so ashamed of myself. I forget her name. I have a brain freeze right now. But anyway, she managed to win the race. But I comment on Facebook on some of the track and field groups that I'm a part of. I said, she won the race in her condition or weather condition. So there's nothing wrong with that. But yes, and even her, she has some Jamaican blood in her. So then that and then there's another Olympic preview which is coming up again this weekend. There's another Diamond League that is coming up this weekend. Again, it's going to feature Shelly and Fraser matching up against Shakira Richardson again. So I don't remember if Okabari from Nigeria is in that race also. But it's going to be another good matchup. Also, we know that there is not much as it relates to big separation as it relates to sprinters, and we're going to have in the hurdles, we're going to have a matchup between Michael Norman of the United States of America and Fred Curley, who are the two of the top 400-meter hurdlers in the world. So yeah, we're fighting through the pandemic, and we're seeing that some of these runners, even though they're faced with these challenges, that they're showing up and they're running good time. They're running good times. So hopefully we're going to see Shelly and Fraser doing much better, but we know that she's one of the best, if not the best in the world as it comes to managing herself and saving herself until it counts. So despite what you've been hearing, the hot topic is about Shakira Richardson, who have the fastest time in the world so far this year. But people know that when it comes to Shelly and Fraser, she always shows up when it counts. And so, I always love to see good competition, like I said before. So hopefully, these guys are going to continue to run and be injury-free, and hopefully we're going to be able to see a very good Olympic. And I heard that the guys in Jamaica are doing very well also as it relates to, McLeod ran here a few weeks ago and, had a very impressive time. That was his first 110 hurdle for the year. And I know that we have a guy back there by the name of Rashid Broadbell that's doing very well in the 110 hurdles also. So we're packed as it relates to the ladies sprint and the 110 hurdles and the 100-meter hurdles. Jamaica have a packed group of individuals. No one knows exactly, except for Shelly and Fraser and maybe Lane Thompson. No one knows who else is going to be representing us. And like I said to Craig some time ago, that we're going to be very competitive. And already I can see that we're going to be competitive. We have a young guy from States who is doing very well. He ran like at 10-1 over the weekend. And he just came back from injuries and a lot of controversy. So, we're expecting to be able to at least field a team as it relates to the Olympics.
Right, I agree with you. There's a lot of talk right now in Jamaica, though, about the future of sprinting, in Jamaica. And I think what the display that we saw at the schools championships recently has served to create some amount of satisfaction that our future in sprinting is still great. that same fellow you spoke of, Sachin
Dennis.
He ran with some of the big wigs recently, and 10.15 was his time in winning the 100-meter sprint against people from the MVP and Titans and Sprint Tech and so on. The schoolboy beat all of them. Of course, we know the girls' side of things seems to be, the female side of things seems to be doing very well as well in terms of, for the future. And the lady from Brosis, Williams, she has been receiving a lot of good talk, about her technique. And she's been labeled as the next pocket rocket by the critiques. Yes. So I think in terms of sprinting in Jamaica, I think we are there. We are going to be a force to be reckoned with way into the future. I mean, a little bit of a concern about Bolt gone and this and that. I say, fret not thyself, man. We have the talent here. And with coaches like our Rossi coach that we interviewed the last
Coach Miles.
That, if we have the caliber of coaches like that gentleman, and we will produce, because the key I think to producing excellence is in ensuring that we don't damage and hurt the youngsters in their grooming. And I think our Rossi coach mentioned that he's not really training them to perform excellently at boys' champs. He's looking beyond boys' champs. He's looking to build a sprinter for all times, right up to the podium of Olympics, which I think is a good strategy. So I am not worried at all about our sprinting prowess. I think we'll do well right through the future. I believe that. I believe in our people,
that's one thing like I mentioned to him last week, that's one thing I admire so much about him, because it's one area that I was going to discuss with you that maybe we need to talk about on one of our shows, about athlete maturation and how you should protect your athletes based on their level of maturity.
That should be it should be ingrained in your training system.
Exactly.
That's a given.
Exactly.
But I think so, not a lot of us, again, coaches were more or less overcome by the need to demonstrate prowess in that they're the best coach and they can
their greatness
champion in a hurry. Right? And even with the association that I'm a part of, the Jamaican Association of Sports Medicine, we have been saying this, not just in sprinting, but in all sport, that do not be in too much of a hurry to make champions out of the youngsters, because they have growth, they have stages of development, they have growth patterns. You have to respect that and allow them to mushroom stage by stage. If you do that, then you will get the champion that you want later, because excellence takes time. Excellence takes time, especially you're talking about podium excellence. Takes time. And I don't think the coaches realize that, and certainly, back then. I guess we get into it now. And I said, that's why I was so pleased with the coach, or Rossi's coach of last week, that we meant that his interview was excellent in terms of his philosophy. I was happy. I was so happy to hear the man say what he said, because, from one end, we are trying to tell coaches, hey, slow down. The kid, he has another 10 years. You don't have to make him a champion in 1 year. Give him some time. And here's this coach now saying, hey, he's not concerned about boys champs. If they do well at boys and girls, and then fine. But beyond that is what he's looking, which I was happy for, It's great.
Which when you think about it, that's what I was going to say to you, that when I asked him about what is his philosophy as a coach, but then he didn't have to go in and specifically tell me in so many words what it is. I could see from what he was talking about, what he was all about. Just like you said, just like any other discipline, like listening, right? It's it's a trained behavior. And some of these coaches, what was surprising to me is that we had coaches, I guess, as people passed through the GC Foster system. Again, I say thanks to whoever vision it was as it relates to GC Foster. More and more you see that coaches are better understanding the science behind the sport and so forth. And they understand how to prepare athletes, because coaches can get very greedy and think about their own, promoting their own interests as in ahead of the interest of the athlete. You know what I
Oh, we
mean?
have seen that so many
And
times.
can severely damage the athlete, and
Yes.
and these are things that we see, that we have seen some growth, and it makes people like me happy, because it was always a major concern of mine. Why do we have to focus so much on winning and winning alone, and not so much on are we overworking the athletes? And it became a big issue about 3 years ago or 4 years ago. It was in the paper, when we saw people like Christopher Taylor got injured, and I forget what his name from Casey got injured, and Kavona got injured, and everybody was saying, "Are we overworking our athletes too much?"
But
You
let me
know,
just jump in here again to, just to back up what you're saying, but to add a new dimension to that, in our experience, in my experience. Um, the injuries, the names that you mentioned are there. Sometimes the injuries can occur because of just too much work.
hmm
But invariably, they happen sometimes because of, I want to say, in, inadequate training or improper training or insufficient training,
yeah,
where you have kids come with gross imbalances
hmm
of musculature because the coach is concentrating so much on doing, just for argument's sake, and a leg extension exercise, and you do it heavy, and yeah,
right,
because you have to build up your thigh, and the kid comes now with a very strong thigh and weak hamstrings.
okay,
Now, the hamstrings, as you well know, are so important
very
in
much so,
sprinting,
very much
especially
so,
when you're doing in fact, when you're slowing down, when you're decelerating, it holds you back. And if it's weak and can't stop you, it can pop, or at the very least get a strain. And this is what happens to a lot of the athletes, where imbalances are there, and it shows up at the wrong time, and usually it shows up when the athlete is under pressure. Need to win now. You need to win. Need to get the points, and they run, and But I think we have, as I say, I think we are, we are seeing evidence that they're not much more aware now, as you rightly said, of the science behind training. Not just training, but training, especially youth. Youth training is a different ball game as compared to when you're training senior athletes. Different approach. If you can train them through the youth stage and train them successfully, chances are you're going to get a very, very successful senior athlete. If they can come through the youth phase without any injuries, any nagging injuries. We have seen youth, they come to boys champs, for instance. They come to boys champ with injuries, They come to boys champ nursing injuries. They say, but wait, how long has this been going on? And they say, sir, well, they've been having this injury for the past 3 months or 3 months. They said, but these seniors, they come to boys champ with chronic injuries. Chronic injuries, they say. And so you lose a lot of these athletes. They get lost along the way because after boys champ, most of the time, that's it. That's it.
I
That's
think
it.
one of the first thing that needs to be done when you get your athletes coming out for the first year, you need to get them to fully understand that they're not allowed to run
No, it's not athlete's responsibility.
I know, but I'm saying to tell them that, because some of the things you can't tell. You can't tell if an athlete is feeling pain most of the time if the athlete don't tell you. I'm talking about the pain. You should always let them know, first of all, you must always run pain-free. I'm not talking about discomfort. I'm talking about pain. The moment you start feeling pain, you're not supposed to be running. And that's the thing. And I also believe that that's why I have so much respect for Coach Miles, to be honest with you, because when I listen to him, and we have talked after the show too, after the show and before, and you know that he also follows a lot of the guidelines and stipulation put out by Rural Athletics.
Well, you should.
Right, and
You should.
And I hope, and this is telling you the kind of gentleman that he is, because he follows everything to the T. And that's I can see very much the passion that he has for the sport. And I was very surprised when he told me, he said, and can you believe it, that track and field is not my favorite sport.
I was going to say to you that when you said for this sport, I was saying to you for all sport, because he's a sportsman.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why why it's so easy to we can talk so much, because that's how I am. I'm passionate about every sport. Pretty much every sport. I can declare to you that there's only one sport or two sports that I have too much interest in, and that's equestrian and fencing.
I make the differ. Well, I get to differ because I love horses, mind you.
So you love the
I love horses, but I understand what you mean. I understand, but
yeah. But anyway, so you touch on something last week, John. That I have to make this a topic of discussion, because you spoke about it on Thursday on our show, that there were certain discussion as it relates to Gayle being selected back to the West Indies cricket. And you talk about
South Africa match in June.
Yeah, and I know people, but you know what happened? Then I start paying attention to something. So Phil Mickelson, I don't know if you know who that is, just became the oldest player to ever win a major in golf, right? And see if you see where I'm going. And also, if you remember earlier on this year, I think it was in February, that Tom Brady, who is 43 years old, won the Super Bowl, right? And also, it doesn't stop there. Sue Bird, who plays with Seattle Storm in the WNBA, she also won a championship. And she's the oldest female player currently in the WNBA. So my question to you is, as a person who works in physical training, do you think that the difference is caused by better people taking better care of their body and also technology? Tell me how technology and diet.
But let me jump in right away, because you see, the human being, the human person, you go through phases throughout your lifespan. We mentioned earlier about the youth phase. It requires a certain application in terms of how you train youth. If you don't train them correctly within that phase, you can either destroy them or undertrain them,
Right.
Good. Then you have the middle ages, senior championship ages and blah, 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 where they do good, podium and they're champions and they're train hard and so on. Fine. But then you have the latter years when and it depends on the sport now, but when you start to touch 35, 40 and so on, it requires now a different approach. Not only the physical training, but also your mental preparation and application as well becomes important. I find that we don't pay attention. And I say I am limiting that to, our immediate situation, Jamaicans and the Caribbean and so on. We don't pay a lot of attention to the phases. Mind you, as I said before, we're just now beginning to get into it. But I don't think we pay enough attention to the phases of training and what you do, what's appropriate at the various phases. Because I say straight up that I believe that athletes can do well way up into the ages. Whether or not that athlete has the wherewithal, the mental set to do what's required. Because remember, when you're at that age now, you're talking about picnic. You have picnic. You have all these little other things that will bombard your mental set. Your kids at home. All these things. And all that can interfere with how well you train or how well you even absorb training. Right? So if you don't get all those things right, then your performance won't be as best as it should be. So having said all of that, I believe that Gail can do well right up to perhaps even 50, if you ask me. And let me stick up in here. Like when Brad and Lara, for instance, resigned some years ago, that to me was such a disappointment. Brad Lara could have continued. His skill set could have carried him through another 10 years. I think he probably resigned because of more political, cricket politics more than anything else. Mm-hmm. But he could have carried on for much. Bolt himself, Usain Bolt, could have carried on for a number of more years and do excellently.
Definitely.
Right? I know that. So I am not at all hesitant to say that Gail will do well if he has that set up and the training and so on. So yeah, Merlin Ottey, remember that Merlin Ottey,
Yes.
Was competitive up to I think age what? Could have been about 50, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so you can do it. Right. Whether or not you wish to or you have the mindset to is a totally different matter. Totally different matter.
Yeah, but all of the players that I've just named, including Gail, they are all above 40 years. 40 years or more, because Sue Bird is 40 years old. And the reason why I brought it up is we have on this show we spoke so many times about all the different areas of sports that needs to come together in order for the athletes to be successful, to perform at their ceiling level or above, even above what we would say above a ceiling level, and also to maintain good health. So the reason why I brought it up, I know that you wouldn't be able to discuss the nutritional aspect of it, but I just wanted to kind of highlight the different areas that need to come into play in order for this to be successful. Because I can almost bet with you that people like Tom Brady has a physio going up and down with him, that he has masseuse going up and down with him.
At that level,
a nutritionist going up and down with him.
At that level of professionalism.
A sports psychologist going up and down with him.
At that level of professionalism.
Right.
Like Tiger Woods and these guys, when they travel away, they travel with people who can advise them on everything from nutrition. It's at that stage, it's not a chance thing anymore, Mm-hmm. At that stage and age, if you want to say, it's not a chance thing anymore. Everything matters. How you eat, how you sleep, if you want peak to perform at your peak.
Right.
You did mention about technology and so on. So yes, all those things have to come into play now. The technology in terms of how you train, technology in terms of your eating system, your recuperative, how you recuperate is important. So all that, yeah, man, that's a given.
And last but not least, like I said, I was going to touch on something that deals with we touch a little bit on racism in sports, and so Naomi Osaka.
Yes.
Yeah, she tweeted.
Sports Woman of the Year.
Yes, she tweeted very much so. I'm glad you pointed that out. She was voted, or she was named Sports Woman of the Year by the prestigious Laureus Royal Sports Award magazine, or Sports Award. But yeah, she said in a tweet that she won't talk to the media at the French Open. She said she want to focus more on her mental health. Now, this is, of course, everybody should know she's a four-time Grand Slam winner. And she said, mentioning that the journalists question tennis players following a loss, and the questions that they're asking, I quote, is like kicking a person while they're down. Okay? And so the reason why I brought this up is that there is a fine, that the body charges, the Grand Slam body charges if you refuse from giving an interview. I think it's something like, I want to be sure, I think it's $20,000. And she went on to say that she hoped that the fine that they're going to fine her will be used to be donated to mental health. Now, there is something here that I noticed that is very important for us to see. Now, this is coming after the Australian Open. Remember that they interviewed Serena Williams and she broke down crying, remember? And we mentioned that on our show. And this is also coming just before the French Open. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I think her decision came about because of these two things, right? Number one, because of what she saw happen to Serena Williams, okay? Whereby Serena Williams is usually asked a lot of unfair questions that are not new, in my opinion, are usually asked over and over and over again. Even there, to me, nobody should have gone to ask Serena, is it true that she's going to retire after Australian if she didn't say that? You know what I mean? To me, it's height of provocation when the person just, is in a high emotion because they just lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then her sister Venus have been through the same situation before. Now, it is very smart of Naomi. And here's the reason why. Because the French Open is not Naomi type of court to play on. So most likely she's thinking within herself, I believe that she's thinking within herself, I believe that I might not win the French Open. Because Naomi, all of her Grand Slam that she won, all four were won on hard court. They were won either at Australian Open or at the US Open. Because, Wimbledon, which is a part of the major, is played on grass. And the French Open is played on clay. So she knows that most likely, even though she's ranked number 2 in the world, I might not win the French Open. So here's what's going to happen. Okay. These guys are going to start interviewing me. They're going to start asking me these unfair questions.
But I have to respect her bravery.
Yes.
I don't know. I totally respect her bravery in terms of stating from now that, hey, I am not giving an interview regardless. Take your
charge me $20,000, but I'm not doing it.
Take your how much $1,000? That's all right to me. And it says to me that it's not all about money for her. She can afford to lose 20 grand or whatever it is they charge as a penalty, and it doesn't bother her. I respect her for that. And you see her pictures. She has when she has on her mask and her clothing, it's all about.
For Australian Open, it was all about somebody who was killed violently by police.
Or something. No, I respect her. I've been respecting her. I think I've been respecting her.
For a 23-year-old, she's very intelligent and
she's aware, not just intelligent, but aware.
Yeah, and that speaks to the fact that with the amount of championship that she has won at such a young age. And also, speak to the fact that she's from the Caribbean because she's the Japanese Haitian.
You have to give thanks to that.
I have to plug that in. But John,
we'll give thanks to that.
Very important.
All right. So
that is ignored in sports, though, is that mental health aspect of sport, whereby players have to go through all of these interviews and you know, like press conferences, and the questions that are being asked of some of
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
the
indeed.
players, especially those of colors. And that's why I said that I
Yeah,
would mention it. Because
indeed,
you know
indeed.
that Serena Williams have been fined before because of this, and Venus Williams have been fined before because of this.
Yeah, it's quite harassing, you know.
Yeah, because it's harassing, you
It's
know.
very
Um,
harassing. And
and
guess what? You know, they make money from it, you know. So
yes,
they develop a whole story now. Say, oh, Serena is going to retire as of the next tournament, you know.
right,
And they build stories around that as to why she's going to retire. Because you know, she's getting old. She lose. But this is how the media is. Their job is to sell their tabloid or sell the news, you know, and they get money for that.
right.
Anyway,
And for
nice, nice,
those
nice.
who were asking questions as to the reason why Serena was crying, well, I think um Osaka, I think she answered their question. She's telling them why she was crying, that when you just lose a match, you don't go and ask those questions, because it's like kicking a
Yeah,
person when they're down.
exactly,
It's
exactly,
like kicking a
exactly,
person when they're
exactly,
down. So you know, her bravery is something that I have to credit her for her bravery,
exactly,
and to
exactly.
be the one to come out and stand up and say, I'm not going to take part in this
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm considering my mental health.
She's a revolutionary.
Like,
She's a revolutionary, man. I love
right.
her.
Yes, for sure. And
Anyway,
I like that. I like that. But once is there any comment that we need to address coming from our viewers or listeners?
nothing of significance. Just high and by and love it and nice program. No, nothing of substance more than that. We
Okay.
can say hi and bye for until next week. Hopefully, I think we might be able to get a guest next week. I gather we
Yes,
may have an
yes.
interesting guest.
Well,
Let
see,
us not say anything
I
yet.
have something big. You know, last week I considered last week as an extravaganza. I'm expecting to bring on something for next week that is going to be even much better. So unconfirmed. We should be having Lavanya on next week, uh,
Yay!
along with some other athletes that I'm not going to name. I know exactly who they are, but I want to keep the rest a surprise. I just want to
That
highlight.
should be quite interesting.
Yeah, so once again, I want to say thanks to our viewers and listeners, and I want to remind you to please like, share, and subscribe to the program, and also continue to send in your comments.
Yeah.
Until next week, bye.
Bon voyage. Take care, all.